Hi, I'm Amy Giaquinto, and I'm here for a moment with Longmont author Jessica Dazzo. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be here.
Jessica, you recently self-published your first novel, Super Me. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
It's a young adult novel, supernatural, paranormal novel. It's about a 17-year-old girl named Faye Aldrite who starts hearing and seeing things that aren't quite right, like the radio saying her name, and she starts feeling like she's going crazy, but she's actually developing an unusual ability, and she needs to figure out what's going on in her little town, so she must learn to embrace the crazy and learn to trust in herself.
Oh, that's amazing. Now, you are also a stay-at-home mom, and you have 2 young kids. Tell me a little bit about your kids.
I have a 9-year-old, Anya, and an 18-month-old, Indy, and yeah.
As a stay-at-home mom, you found time to write and publish a book. How did that work, having 2 young kids at home?
It's a challenge, but I write whenever I can, and right now that means during my youngest daughter's nap time, and then Sunday mornings when my husband can watch the girls.
Now, having an 18-month-old means unpredictable nap times. How did you manage with some days being able to write during nap times and some days not having any time to write, and just some days having your writing time cut short? And I mean, how frustrating was that? And how did you manage achieving your goals while dealing with those issues?
Yeah, it's not easy because you definitely can't count on nap time, and if you have a plan, then the plan will change. And so just kind of going with the flow as much as I can. And I think the biggest challenge for me is when it is nap time, just jumping in and trying to get started right away. Yeah, it's not easy, but to turn on that creative switch, I think is.
And do you have any other time that you write? Like, does your husband help you out on weekends or anything?
Yeah, Sunday mornings is usually my writing time, and he takes over with the girls, and I'm able to get some writing done.
Oh,
so.
That's wonderful. Uninterrupted time, which is so essential, I'm sure, to the creative process. So have you had any formal writing training, or have you gone to school or taken classes for writing?
I haven't, no. I learned on my own and with classes and workshops, and just studying the craft that way. I'm always learning.
Now, in terms of genre, did you just gravitate towards the teen genre, or was it something that you set out initially to write?
It definitely wasn't something that I decided to do. This is kind of the story that came out when I started writing. It was a much different story in the beginning. It's gone through many changes.
Mm-hmm.
The characters' names have changed, and everything has changed. But no, this is the story that came out. So.
That's amazing. Now, not having any formal training in writing, what were your greatest resources, do you think, to help you through the process?
Well, Skibwe is huge.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a great resource. They have so many things happening within that group. I think the biggest thing to help you keep going and to learn more is to connecting with other writers.
Mm-hmm. That's true, different writers groups, and yeah. And
Definitely.
Skibwe is the Society of Children's Books Writers and Illustrators.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now tell me a little bit about your journey in terms of when you got your idea and from inception to completion of your novel.
Okay, so I started writing Super Me in 2008. So I worked on it on and off for about 10 years, writing and rewriting. As far as getting the idea to write it, I didn't really have a plan. I just kind of sat down and started writing, and this is the story that came out, and it evolved over time. Early on, I was at a retreat in Colorado Springs for Skibwe, which is the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. Mm-hmm. I always stumble on that. Part of that retreat, you were able to submit your chapter to an agent or an editor. And so I submitted the first chapter to an editor, and I got some really positive feedback.
Oh, that's amazing.
And it was really exciting. And she requested the rest of the manuscript, and at the time the draft wasn't ready, and so I quickly finished the draft, and it was 120,000 words at that point, which is just way too many words for a young adult novel. And so I did a quick rewrite and chopped 30,000 words, chopped all my darlings, and then submitted it to her, and it didn't work out, but after that I kept working on it, and I went to workshops and classes, and I formed a critique group, and I read lots of books and studied the craft and just kept reworking it until I was finally able to get to a point where I was able to call it done, and published it last year.
Oh, that's terrific. So now, before you self-published, you had submitted to other publishers, right?
Yes. So I submitted to just the one publisher, just the one agent, or the one editor, I'm sorry. But it's pretty much impossible to submit directly to a publisher. You really need to have an agent, and that's not easy either. So I spent a good year researching different agents, trying to find a good match, and submitting. And I got some really positive feedback from that, but in some full manuscript requests, but nothing that panned out.
So is that why you decided to self-publish?
Yes.
Awesome.
I knew that the submission process would be difficult, and I always had in the back of my mind that, you know, if this didn't work out, then I would self-publish, because I wanted to see it through one way or another. So.
Take us through a little bit of the process of actually self-publishing it, from, you know, picking cover art to publishing, because you publish with Amazon, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm really fortunate to be able to say that my husband helped me with a lot of that. He has helped me with the technical and business side of publishing and marketing Super Me. As far as the cover goes, I found a stock photo that I really liked and went well with the book, and my husband Mike put it together and worked with me to get it how it is, and he did all of the formatting for Kindle Direct Publishing on Amazon.
So are you happy with the process and with Amazon in general?
Yeah, so that's sort of a tricky question.
Yeah.
I am so thrilled that my book is published and that it's out there and available for anybody who wants to read it. But that being said, Amazon, there are literally millions of books on Amazon.
Yeah.
So trying to get my book to stand out and be seen by people who may be interested in reading it is that's the challenge.
So now, is there something that readers can do to help with that process?
Definitely. If you read it and you like it, you know, leaving reviews on Amazon and on Goodreads definitely brings attention to the book and brings in potential new readers. So reviews are huge.
What do you think is the most positive thing that's come out of the self-publishing experience for you?
Just knowing that I can put my work out there, getting that last push and publishing my book was huge for me. So I have all these ideas percolating, and I'm really excited to get moving on them, because I know that once I'm finished with them, I can share my story. So that's the big positive.
So it gave you a huge sense of empowerment then, as opposed to sitting around sending out query letters and waiting for somebody else to pick up your work and crossing your fingers. And
right. The time spent submitting to agents was kind of discouraging. I mean, I knew going into it that it was going to be difficult, but agents have what they call their slush pile, and they're just bombarded. They're just flooded with manuscripts, and so it's really hard to stand out. So, but gotta try.
Fantastic. Are you going to plan on in the future maybe trying to pick up an agent or a manager or somebody to help you once you get the super series going and you've built a platform?
It's a possibility. I mean, I would definitely not be opposed to that.
Yeah.
So.
Now, I know you started a Facebook page for the book, but what else have you guys done in terms of marketing, and has anything worked?
Yeah, so the Facebook page we did before it was released to try to spread word that way. And then after, or actually even before it was released, we reached out to some professional reviewers and got some really good feedback from that, so
wonderful.
that was nice. And we did some ads on Amazon and on Goodreads. Nothing that really generated a lot of sales, though. Putting together effective ads and coming up with keywords for the searches is there's a learning curve to that. We're still figuring that out.
Definitely.
But,
Now, you've also done a couple of book signings. How were they, and how was it taking your novel that you had self-published and doing a book signing for the first time?
So exciting. It was so exciting. I did my first book signing at the Used Book Emporium during the Art Walk in September. And then during the Book Fest in Fort Collins, I did a reading there in October. It was a lot of fun. Because of the Art Walk, there was a lot of foot traffic, and so I was able to meet a lot of people and hand out some business cards. And so, yeah, it was really exciting. And my favorite was when people would come up and say, oh, did you write this book? Because I have my poster up and everything, and I was able to say, yes, I did. I did write this. Is my book. So.
Oh, that's incredible. Yeah. What a great feeling. So I feel like you're saying that, self-publishing hasn't been lucrative for you so far yet because you don't have much of a platform, but from a self-confidence standpoint and from a motivational standpoint, it's been phenomenal.
Yeah, it's definitely encouraged me to work on other projects and get them out there. So.
Oh, that's great. So speaking of other projects, what are you working on now? I know you're working on Super Us.
Yes. So Super Me is the first in a super series. Super Us is the second one, and that's getting close to being done. There's also the third book is Super You, and I have the rough first draft of Super You finished, and I have some novella ideas for a super series that will come later on. All of that is kind of on the back burner right now, though. I'm working on a young adult zombie novel. And so that's underway, and I'm fitting in some time here and there. Writing time is kind of scarce with a toddler, but I'm finding some time here and there to work on a new younger middle grade novel. It's a series. It's a magical adventure series about a girl and her cat. So that's another project idea that I'm working on. And then I put together a compilation of short stories. Can I tell you about that?
Oh yeah, I'd love to. I would love to hear it. Yes.
So I love to do writing exercises and writing prompts. They're a lot of fun, and I think it's a good way to kind of get your creative juices flowing. And so I am part of the Longmont Writers Club, and they meet once a month for prompt writing. And so it's a 500-word limit, and so I've been putting together some of those short stories, and that will be published this year. But the big news is that I have a picture book in the works. Several years ago, I wrote a manuscript for a picture book, and a friend of mine who is local and a very talented artist is doing the illustrations for the picture book. And it's called Berries for Bruno.
Awesome.
And that will be coming out this year. It's about a bear who is kind of stuck in a rut, and he is forced out of his comfort zone to try new things, and so I'm really excited about that.
Oh, that's super exciting. If you had it to do all over again with the self-publishing route, what would you do differently?
I wouldn't wait 10 years. It took a long time. I enjoyed the process. There was a lot that I learned along the way, but I definitely dragged my feet just taking that big step and putting it out there. I worked on this book for so long, and it kind of becomes your baby, and it's such a big deal to take that step and put it out there for people to read. So
exactly.
that was a big deal for me.
So your best advice is stop waiting, just do it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I would do differently. Yeah.
Yeah. If you had some advice to give to anybody, especially super busy moms, what would it be? Moms who want to write their own novels.
Yeah, well, you have to follow that old advice, where sleep when the baby sleeps and write when the baby writes.
Yeah, like anybody does that. That does not happen.
Write when the baby writes. No, no, you just have to kind of take advantage of the time when you have it. Write when you can. Carve out some writing time, even if it's once a week, because like being a mom, it's 24/7. There are always all these other things that get in the way
laundry,
and that
dishes,
need to be laundry and dishes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
All the time. But protect your writing time and tell your family, close your door, put some headphones in, or just if that doesn't work, just leave the house and get away from the laundry and dishes.
That's wonderful. Now, tell us a little bit about your Facebook page where people can follow you and keep track of what you're doing.
Well, it's just, it's really easy. It's Jessica Dazzo on Facebook, author page. And I try to, I have some writing prompts and some fun things, but definitely updates on book signings and releases and all of that. So, and also my website too is a good place.
Yeah, what's your website address?
It's jessicadazzo.com. So
fantastic.
Try to keep it really simple.
That's good. And then also, where can we find Super Me?
So locally, it's at the Used Book Emporium on Main Street. It is also at the Longmont Public Library.
Wonderful.
That's very exciting too. And in Fort Collins, it's at the Indigo Rose Books. Obviously, it's on Amazon. You can find it for Kindle and also in paperback.
And now Jessica is going to read an excerpt from her book, Super Me.
I'm Jessica Dazzo, and I am the author of Super Me. I will be reading the end of chapter 1. Bells chimed as I entered Buzzworthy, the best coffee shop ever. I unraveled the scarf from my neck as warmth and the sweet smell of coffee came to greet me like old friends. Being there had everything to do with hot coffee and not the hot coffee shop guy that sometimes worked there, who I'd had a crush on since I discovered the place, but had never actually spoken to. Nothing to do with him at all. I tripped on the nothing on the way to the counter when I saw him standing behind it, then regained my composure as best I could. But what was he doing behind the register? Hot coffee shop guy was the one that made the hot coffee, not took the orders. It was all wrong. Luckily, he'd been looking away and seemed to have missed my graceful entrance. I stepped forward, and then only the counter was between us. "What can I get for you?" he asked, speaking to me for the first time, and sparks flew all around us. Then he threw his towel over his shoulder and looked at me with brilliantly baby blue eyes that I was sure to get lost in and never find my way out of again. And that was going to be okay with me, except that he was waiting for me to say something because he'd asked me a question. I said, responding in the most classy of ways. Then I stared at the menu that was mounted high on the wall behind him. I stared like it was the most interesting and confusing thing I'd ever seen. Like I'd never before ordered a beverage in all of my life, and I was pressed to figure it out like it was a complex equation that would somehow save the world from certain destruction. Armageddon. It was like Armageddon, because he was staring at me and waiting. But I wasn't thinking about how he was staring at me and waiting. I was too busy focusing on the menu and on not blushing and only being successful at one of those things. There was an answer that I was supposed to be giving right then, a correct answer, a beverage answer. And today it couldn't be the same old boring thing I got all the time. It had to be something more interesting, like a macchiato that was different and new, and I was even pretty sure I knew how to pronounce it, but he was smiling or smirking. Why was he smiling or smirking at me? Did he think this was funny? Was I being funny? Was I taking a long time to order? I was taking a long time to order. I was taking the longest time to order in all of time. I had to come up with an answer right then, before any more time passed. So I said, "Caramel macchiato?" And it came out like a question. He nodded, as if letting me know that it was, in fact, the right answer. Thank goodness. "What size?" he asked, asking me another question that I would have to answer. "Size? What size?" "Small?" I asked him, and I didn't mean it to be a question. It was supposed to be my choice, my order, not a question. But was small a good size for a caramel macchiato? What the heck was a macchiato anyway? You got it, he said. And so I had chosen correctly again. Then we were smiling at each other, and it started to feel like it might not be the end of the world. And that was a nice feeling to have while I fished money out of my pocket and handed it to him. Our fingers touched, and more sparks flew, many sparks. Then he turned away so he could make my drink and so that I could breathe. As I leaned casually against the counter in a casual way, hot coffee shop guy steamed and stirred and poured, making my macchiato like nobody's business. It may not have taken as long as I thought to order, and my cheeks may have been red, but maybe he thought it was from the cold outside. It was cold outside. Things may have been better than not that bad. Things may have been okay, or maybe even good. Until some girl's voice jutted in, calling, "Lucan?" And a pretty blonde girl with pigtails came sashaying in from the back room. "Huh?" said not just hot coffee shop guy, said Lucan, because hot coffee shop guy had a name and I finally knew what it was, and it was Lucan, and it was the best name I had ever heard. Blonde girl leaned against the counter next to him and crossed her arms, looking his way and biting her thumbnail. I was thankful to her for revealing the name that I'd wondered about for so long, but her work was done, and she was now free to leave, and should, but wasn't. "Do you want to go to that party tonight?" she asked him, "at Becca's." "No. You know what I want to do?" said hot coffee shop Lucan. "Dance." And then he turned to me, and he asked me another question. "Whipped cream?" he asked. His voice was low and husky as he looked at me and not at the other girl. And then I got it. It clicked. I said yes, and it was an answer, a real answer, and not a question at all, because there was another question, a more important question, at the tip of my tongue. There was a reason I'd ended up in that coffee shop that morning, a reason I was there and not in class, a reason I'd mistaken my name on that poster. He held my fancy drink out, and as I took it, our hands met again, sparks and more sparks. "Thank you," I said, my voice firm and calm and clear, because that day, my 17th birthday, was not just my day, not just a day for a fresh start and new things. It was a day for a new me, a brave me. It was a day for a question that I never thought I'd ask, that I didn't until that very moment even know that I wanted to ask. "Lucan," I said, "there's a dance at my school. You want to go?" And then I looked right into those baby blue eyes of his and added bravely, "With me?" And then there was an answer. It had been the best day until that answer, because the answer was laughter.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And you know, I have to say,
it's so much fun.
I read your book, and I have to say her book is phenomenal. It is an absolute page turner, and for busy people, it's wonderful because you can just plow right through it in a day, day and a half, something like that, if you have the free time. But anyway, I'm Amy Giaquinto, and this has been A Moment with Longmont author Jessica Dazzo.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.